Hey folks, James Abrenio coming to you this morning. It's August 28th. I just read an article that I thought it was important to highlight. AG Miyares links tragedy to sentencing reform law that should have not applied, and this by Lucas Powell. Looks like it was just yesterday authored. And the reason I highlight this is we all know that the Attorney General's race, and if you don't know, the Attorney General's race is coming up pretty soon. A lot of focus is on the governor's race, which is important here in Virginia. But I'm a lawyer. The AG's race to me is the most interesting and frankly the most important. The Attorney General is the top lawyer of our state. They run the biggest law firm of the Commonwealth. They represent us as a total, and we are all their clients, so to speak. And we as lawyers, we take legal ethics opinions from our Attorney General's office. We rely on their advice. And I've got to say, I'm a bit concerned. And to be clear, I'm a Democrat. I am not a fan of Miyares, regardless of this story. I've been a huge critic of his. But the reason I'm shooting this video is I think this story highlights how important it is that we not play reckless with facts, especially when it comes to very, very serious circumstances. And I'm hoping that the Attorney General will take a look at this article and clarify for the public what's going on, and if a mistake was made, to apologize, because I think that's what's called for in that job, how serious it is. So folks have been paying attention. One of the ways that Miyares has railed against Democrats is essentially calling Democrats soft on crime and allowing violent criminals to run around the streets and cause danger to the communities. He's railed against something called enhanced earned sentence credits that Democrats passed back in 2020 as part of a pretty huge push for criminal justice reform. And essentially for folks' convictions that qualify, the enhanced earned sentence credits allowed folks to get out early if they perform certain things to show good faith while they're incarcerated. But a big caveat is you have to have a qualifying conviction, one of which not is a manslaughter conviction. This case deals with the tragic death of a young nurse practitioner that was killed by an individual that was previously convicted of manslaughter. And Miyares claims essentially that he was allowed to be out early because of these enhanced earned sentence credits. And as a result, essentially, he was there to kill this young lady. Just getting into the article, for close to 2 months, Miyares has campaigned on the 2023 death of Lindsey Braun, a nurse practitioner who was struck by a car while backing out of her driveway in South Richmond. Miyares has highlighted, and let me increase this article a little bit bigger. Miyares has highlighted that the driver, Tobias McLean, as having been released early because of policies by the Virginia Democrats in 2020, one particular enhanced earned sentence credits allowed for some well-behaved prisoners to be released. McLean, Miyares said, was one of those recipients. Turns out, though, but a review of state laws, sentencing records related to the case found that McLean should not have qualified under the program. McLean was convicted of malicious wounding with a firearm when he was 17, never qualified and for enhanced earned sentence credits. And in fact, in 2023, the Supreme Court of Virginia ruled that individuals disqualifying were ineligible for credits. Now, it appears from the article, I'm not exactly sure what has happened and where the misunderstanding happened. It looks like the Virginia Department of Corrections maintains that he was eligible because his DOC term did not include malicious wounding. However, a transfer order in McLean's case clearly lists malicious wounding as an offense for which he was sentenced to serve within the prison sentence. Now, what I think may have happened is perhaps the DOC inadvertently gave him early sentence credits because they weren't aware or didn't clock that the malicious wounding disqualified him for the program. Maybe that's what's happening. Maybe Miyares' team, was the one who mistaked the facts, but it looked like there was a lack of clarity. But the biggest point to be taken from this story, though, is in addition to his conviction for not qualifying for enhanced credits, sentencing orders in his case indicate that McLean would have been released in February 2023, 5 months before the crash, even with no credits for good time, enhanced, or regular. So what that essentially means is it didn't really matter one way or the other. Now, of course, the logic about, well, if you had gotten up an hour early, would you have been on the sidewalk before you got hit by the car? If you had stayed a little bit later for lunch, would you have gotten robbed? Same thing here. Maybe had he been in jail longer, he would not have been in the exact location when he ended up tragically killing Miss Braun. Those arguments to be made, but the point here is, though, that the lack of it's either one of two things. Either Miyares' office was so reckless with the facts to not properly investigate that they got it wrong recklessly, or they were aware and they fudged it in order to just look better politically. I don't know what the issue was there. I'm not going to sit there and speculate. What I do know, though, is it seems to me that a mistake was made, and I think the Attorney General needs to come out and be clear about what happened here. And what I don't like about it is this point. After publication on Wednesday, the Attorney General's office shared internal documents from the Department of Correction showing McLean was given 28 days of good time under the program. It's unclear if the decision violated state law. And what that says to me, and let me just highlight that and make it a little bigger. What that says to me, though, is that is not, hey, let's take a moment to figure out what happened here. Hey, maybe we made a mistake. Hey, maybe we were too cavalier. Maybe what is direct, but we still think it had an impact. It is them saying, it's not our fault. It's not on us. Here's the documents, when the documents are still wrong. And that lack of empathy, that lack of care, and the lack of humility really concerns me, and it really upsets me as a lawyer. And I just hate to see cases like this. I will say, and one thing that the publication makes absolutely clear is the grace of the family of this of Miss Braun, who passed away. The Times Dispatch spoke by phone with Keith and Mindy Applewhite. The family originally did a story which described Mindy Applewhite's frustration with the probation officer managing McLean. The family felt that McLean should have been reincarcerated due to an alleged probation violation after his release, when his car was stopped for having improper tags, apparently cocaine in the car. Maybe they're absolutely right that there should have been a probation violation. Honestly, I just don't know the case well enough to comment on that. But that feeling is absolutely right. I get that. I understand that. Even more to their credit, Keith Applewhite, a former gang detective, said the family were told by the Attorney General's office that he was released under the reforms passed in 2020. The family still trusts that Miyares' office was right. Keith Applewhite said that Mindy would have never done an ad if it was true. Keith Applewhite said that they chose to speak up in order to honor their daughter. If they hadn't lost a child, you won't understand. It feels like your life is torn apart. And amazingly, Keith is quoted as saying, "We're okay with the bias. He's young. He didn't have his full brain cells. He wasn't thinking. He ended up taking a life." And after the crash, Lindsay was transported to the VCU Medical Center where she worked. Keith Applewhite said hundreds of staffers lined the hallway for an honor walk as her body was being transported for organ donation. I mean, the grace there is something that, honestly, I hope that I never have to find out. I've got 2 daughters of my own. I hope to never have to experience what they're going through. I hope to believe that I would have the grace that they're demonstrating. Honestly, though, I don't think I would have the grace, especially in circumstances like this. At the very least, I'd want an apology. But again, who am I to say what they need, what they deserve? I've represented people that have been catastrophically injured. I've represented families who've lost loved ones as a personal injury attorney. I've also done criminal defense, where I've represented folks that have taken horrific actions that have led to devastating consequences. These circumstances are always horrific to hear about, to be involved in as a lawyer. And that's the reason, in my view, you have to take these circumstances so seriously, and you have to treat them with the utmost respect, because it's people's lives that are impacted. Victims, particularly, that are going through so much that, ultimately, are they the ones that should be calling the shots as far as sentencing and what happens. They should obviously be involved, but should they step in as the role of judge? That's not what their goal is, or not the goal. That's not what the law says. Ultimately, a judge or a fact finder makes these decisions, with the victims being essentially the witnesses to help reach a just result. But as a lawyer representing these folks, you have a duty to do your best to represent them zealously and in a manner with respect and dignity. And so I just hope that if it turns out that the AG's office got this wrong, that they and I'm not going to say what the Applewhite family deserves. I don't know what they deserve. I don't know what they want. They may be very happy with the way the office has handled it, and that is totally fair. I respect that. What I think, though, this video is for the public, what the public deserves. We deserve an explanation as to what the actual facts are. And if it turns out that his office jumped the gun either intentionally or inadvertently, we need an explanation, because far too often when we talk about criminal justice reform, it's just easy to say, you know what, you're soft on crime. We just need to lock everybody up and throw away the key. Having worked in both sides of the aisle, doing both victim representation and criminal defense representation, the reality is these are very, very complicated circumstances, and every case needs to be decided on its own facts. And I'm not trying to say that Democrats don't also use tragedy politically, but I'd like to think that if they do and they make a mistake, that and I would call them to step up and be honest about it as well, because these are really serious cases, and this is just a tragic situation for everybody. So to the Applewhite family, if you ever happen to watch this, I probably won't. This is me just probably talking to 10 people on the internet. My heart goes out to you. I don't mean this video is any disrespect to you. It's really, I just think that from a public standpoint, the public deserves to know more about what happened here, not personal facts to your family, and unless you want that, and that's fine. I totally understand that. But from a process standpoint, what's happening in the office, because obviously the AG is leaning on this big time for re-election, and if it turns out that he's wrong, we need clarity. And it can be, hey, I made a mistake. Fine. I'm not asking for, him to resign on this, but at least some recognition. If it turns out he's wrong. Now, if he was right and this story is wrong and I'm wrong, then I'll be the one to apologize. I'm fine with that too. But from what I'm seeing, it's just really concerning. I wish the family the best, but I hope the Attorney General at least gives us more information. And if he's right, then show us he's right. But if there was a mistake made, own it. Thanks, guys. Wish you guys the best.